If you have ever been to Orania, do tell us, did you do any financial transactions in Orania's own wink wink currency, the Ora? The exciting news is a new series of Oras were just introduced. A new creation of the Orania Chamber of Commerce. And before we get into the symbolism of this new series and an exciting new development in the amount of notes printed, let's introduce Tony Correia, the chairperson of the Orania Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Joost. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
It's very important as we do this introduction of the new series to also make a video in English, given the fact that such a huge amount of our supporters of the Ora series, but also the collectors who actually buys this, is international supporters for Orania. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, we've received information that it goes to America, it goes to Europe. In fact, from the auction that we had on Friday, we had purchases from England and the Netherlands.
Fantastic. So it just comes to show that the Orania currency monetary system is actually quite popular internationally as well. But there is something to it. The Ora story is not something that started recently. The Ora started 22 years ago, actually. Back in 2004. I can't believe it's 22 years ago. I remember it very well. The first series of Ora that was launched back then by the Orania Chamber of Commerce with the primary goal of creating economic value in circulation in Orania. Given the fact that we bought the ghost town, there was no industry, there was no economy, there was nothing, and it had to be built. And circulating money was one of the good drivers of that.
Correct, and obviously one of the unintended consequences was the security it brought to the town, because you could no longer just rob a teller, because there might be some auras in there which you could not be useful anywhere else.
Absolutely, it couldn't be useful elsewhere. And given the fact that we still do actually take credit card, debit card, and rand transactions.
Correct.
The proposed criminal would never know what the amount of Oras versus rands would be in the bank, in the gas station, or at the shop or at the supermarket. So doing a lot of effort to rob a place, and to pretty high risk given the fact that it's Orania, I would say, would not pay off that well, because if you get some Ora notes, it's not usable elsewhere. But there's other advantages as well. Backing the Ora with rands means that there's a pretty good investment that can be used to empower the businessmen and women of Orania.
Correct, and the bank obviously receives interest on every rand in circulation, which is otherwise not possible if you just use rands. And then obviously all the notes that do not return is a capital injection into the economy.
Absolutely. People would take Oras out of our economy and insert rands. So they would exchange Ora for a rand, putting rands into our economy, and taking Oras out as souvenirs. But then there's one more aspect. Only for me, it's the most important thing of the Ora. The Ora is not in isolation. It's not merely an economic tool. Orania's measure of success would never be just how big our GDP is.
Correct.
Economic growth is extremely important. Political ideas cannot be executed if it's not backed by monetary economic value. However, I think the most important thing of the Ora is, it's a bit dissident. It's to say, this is who we are. This is the symbols that we want on our money. This is what we want to carry in our wallets. It's a cultural thing.
It's who we represent, who have represented us, and it's also a compass of the direction we want to take moving forward.
Tony, absolutely. I'm going to give a quick overview of the A series until this series, and then I want you to take our viewers into a deep dive onto this very exciting cultural symbolism of the newest notes. So as many people know, back in 2004, and do share in the comments, please, if you ever been to Orania, if you ever did a transaction with Oras, tell us if you ever did it, and also tell us if you know which series you have. What pictures do you have on your Oras? What kind of art? From which year is it? But let's quickly start back in 2004. The situation in Orania is little to no economy. This needs to be developed. And here comes this brilliant idea to say, let's create a monetary system. Now, it's illegal to compete with the rand.
Correct.
So if you strictly go on the legal guidelines, it's impossible to get that advantage of circulation. However, it's not illegal to create a coupon system. A coupon system is a very legal way of doing your own thing. Now, what would happen if you take that to its furthest possible iteration? And that's exactly what Orania did. But they also did it with a bit of a twinkle in the eye, wink, wink kind of situation, saying, we are going to take this very serious because it's actual an economic injection into our community, but we're going to do it on a fun, informal way, putting not very serious art on the notes, however, rather Afrikaner folklore, things like Trompie, Rageltjie de Beer, putting up the Nooit Gedachter horse, which is a famous endurance horse bred by Afrikaners, and things like that. And that kept kind of the theme for the Ora for a long time, until change came. Which series changed the first time?
So the first change came with the E-series when it introduced the 200 note, where they then symbolized the Koeksuster monument. And E and F series followed the same suit, and then we had the big change at the G series, where we started representing the lifespan, all the different events in your life, from birth all the way to growing old.
Absolutely, and also the cultural implications of that, education, young couples in their cultural clothing, Orania style, elderly couples still being together, and so on. And on the right-hand side of that series were the foundational principles of Orania: own land, own institutions, own economy, own faith, own language, and so on. And then the next series was in the theme of the creation commandment, which is in Afrikaans bewoon, bewerk, bewaar. In English, I would suppose it's something along the lines of live on the land, work the land, and preserve the land. And that was very much the theme of nature, our natural resources, our animals, and our trees and so on surrounding Orania.
Yeah, and the birds. So we had the trees, the birds, and the animals, all in the area that we kind of put on the notes to kind of, and we can actually see them at the back here on the H series. What we've done there,
Tony. And then came this series, an exciting new phase, I suppose, in the Ora's lifespan. A total rethink of what it means to have an Ora on your wallet, including a very exciting addition to the series of notes. Firstly, the theme were originally freedom in economics, but that changed. Why?
So Professor Karel Boshoff released a book, Vryheid en Oorvloed, and in the book he describes how you can't compartmentalize your freedom. You have to live it in your fullest, to the fullest extent. And from there we realized that we need to make a change. And the change we made was to change the theme to our heritage and our strive for freedom.
Freedom from the historical perspective is much more than just economic freedom.
Correct.
Economic freedom can so easily become just to escape something, in my opinion. It is not the only goal. This is to say, yes, economic freedom is an element of the greater strive, the greater goal of being a people, being a folk, and adding to that, obviously, the entire idea of honoring the past so that you understand the future.
Correct. It's also, it gives you a compass. So where you look at what did our forefathers do? How did they, how was their day-to-day life? How did they handle obstacles? What did they do? What was their methodology? And it's inspirational, not only for us but also for the children. And this is a kind of an instrument to learn our children of what happened in the past.
Absolutely. So, Tony, before we put this new series on the screen, and as I said, you broke some big records Friday night with the auction where international collectors, local collectors competed to break absolute records for the Orania Chamber of Commerce for this as a collector series, as well as some of the old medallions, minted medallions, and the old series that was also auctioned off. But let's start with the general theme of these notes. The general theme is, as you said, freedom through our past. And let's look at the notes just before we show them, so that people can have an idea what to look for. They will see something on the left, something on the right, something on top. What is the theme?
So on the left, we've got cultural icons that we want to celebrate, and then on the right is monuments in the same time frame or time age that represents the same time period. And then in the background, we try to also illustrate and give a feeling of what the note represents. Then on the top, we are celebrating 35 years of Orania, the municipality. Not so much the idea. The idea is a bit older than the actual town itself. So we are celebrating 35 years of the town, and also on top of that, we have Soli Deo Gloria, which all praise to God. And it's a centralized theme throughout the note, where we each note around the icon we show Psalm 9. If you put together all the notes, you can read the whole psalm, and it's also symbolic because it's the 9th series, but also it has it has a call to action for our nation. Or for our folk, yeah.
Let's quickly go note by note. So we can't spend too much time, but let's quickly go note to note. We have them on the screen now. People can watch. We're starting with the creation of a feeding station, basically, to gather supplies for the Dutch East Indian Company, and as a effect of that, a new people being created. Jan van Riebeeck on the 10 ora note.
Correct. So Jan van Riebeeck it's where it all started for our people, and for us being in Africa, or the southern tip of Africa. Jan van Riebeeck started all that. So we therefore, we resemble. We put him on the note.
A hero. And then on the right hand side, we've got the castle.
Correct.
Created by him. And then, Tony, you said something very interesting about Orania's cultural holidays being represented on the back of these notes. Do tell.
So on the back of each note, we've got the holidays, and on the 10 we celebrate Founders Day, which is the day we were found. So
interesting that both the founding of the Cape of Good Hope, with Jan van Riebeeck starting this new nation, basically, and also the founding of Orania, which was on, I think, the 13th of April. The town was actually bought. So we can celebrate both of those in one holiday. And you got the Mossie.
The Mossie, yeah.
On the right-hand side of the 10. What is the history of that? That is a symbol that was garnered through war, specifically. And I can think of two major conflicts where the Mossie got a very symbolic, strong theme.
So it started with the Second Anglo-Boer War, where there was lots of struggles for our folk, and the woman got hope in the sense that if God will provide for the Mossie, then, or the sparrow, then obviously then there would also be provision for themselves.
And it was put on the smallest possible transactional mint, which was the 1 cent back then. Well, no, it was not cents.
Yeah. It was I think it was the tikkie or the penny, and then
was it the wife of President M.T. Steyn that actually T.B. Steyn that pushed for that to give hope for the women in the concentration camps.
Correct, and that remained on the as the smallest transactional coin up until recently, where they replaced it with the small honeybee.
Also important theme during the border war, I know, but that's a story for another day. On the 20, you have another very important, both cultural, political and religious event, and that is the vow of Geloftedag, the vow of the Battle of Blood River. Who's the hero on the left-hand side?
So we've got Andries Pretorius, who was the leader. We were at a stage where we were lost for leaders, and he came to the fore and really stepped up and gave leadership when we really needed it.
And making a vow to God, if victory would be given to the voortrekkers at that battle, they would also keep this as a Sabbath day, as
Correct.
a day like a Sabbath, and build the church,
Correct.
which is the one in Pietermaritzburg, which is represented on the right of the note.
Correct.
So it's just obvious that at the back, the Battle of Blood River, Tsarl Silje's vow to God is represented.
Correct, yeah.
Geloftedag in Orania.
Yeah, you cannot exclude that.
Moving from the 20 to the 50, we have an important historical event. That was the first Anglo-Boer War. I actually don't like the phrase Anglo-Boer War, like it was two parties evenly responsible for the conflict. I would like to call it the first Freedom War and the second Freedom War, as we call it in Afrikaans, Vryheidsoorlog. We were not the aggressor. And the first Freedom War is actually happily still the one that we won, coming to a climax at the Battle of Majuba Hill. A very well-known battle.
Correct.
And you decided to honor that phase of our history, which is often overlooked part of our history.
It's a really important part because it's also it gave our people a sense of belonging. It gave us the founding roots for our republic, and it was not the perfect republic. It had its challenges, but it started our folks' strive for freedom.
Luckily winning that war, and what's some of the rest of the symbolism on the note?
So
there we have a Boer commando firing to the hill.
Yeah, so it's a battle scene for the fight of Majuba, and then we've got the Paardekraal monument, which on the couple months prior they reconfirmed the vow. So
and that monument was built.
That monument was built in the name of that.
On the back, you still have the Battle of Majuba being represented. I think an unexpected turn in the war to actually the Boer people of the Transvaal actually winning this war. And what do you have here?
We have the Blaukop Koggemander.
I wonder how you translate that. I've got no idea.
But it's agile and it has the ability to adapt. So.
Yeah. Exactly as agile as the reaction to the British occupation of the hill was, I'd suppose.
Correct.
In Orania, many of our viewers and our listeners might have seen the fact that we had so much attention to President Paul Kruger, the president of the Transvaal Republic. But we did not forget about the Free State, the brave and also very adaptable Free State. President Steyn then, on the 100 Oran note, a man that was well known for modernizing the legal system, the education system, and doing much more. Very brave man.
Yes, and he always had the approach to do it peacefully. Trying to get a peaceful agreement where fighting was always the last option. Yeah. The last resort.
But when it got to that point, he did not stand back either. And that is also represented in the office brought by the women and children. And we can still see in the Free State, in the capital of the Free State, one of South Africa's three capitals, in Bloemfontein, the War Museum and the Women's Monument also then represented on the monument side of this note.
Correct. And then in the picture, there you'll see a resemblance also people fighting in the trenches. So those are actually the trenches of Magersfontein. Famously, Bok van Blerker's the song Afrikaner Hart, which
by Magersfontein trek ons die
lyn. So that also resembles that.
Absolutely. Brave but sad part of our history. You have the duiker on the left-hand side of the back of the note.
Correct.
Above the ads. And then the same picture of the trench warfare at Magersfontein.
Correct.
Going over to the 20th century. Well, actually, I think Twisius, if I have my history correct, Tony, Twisius was actually at the Battle of Magersfontein as a combatant. He's well known for translating the Bible to Afrikaans, and I'm pretty sure that's the reason, but it follows very nicely on the 100 Ora.
Correct.
Knowing that he was a religious leader, but he was no pacifist. When the British attacked, he joined the commandos, and he actually carried a rifle.
Yeah, and
you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe I'm right.
So the reason for the 200 note then was after the Second Freedom War, we had a defeated folk, a defeated nation, and we had to rise up. And
wounded but undefeated.
Wounded but undefeated, and we had to rise up, and rise up we did. We translated the Bible into our own language. We gave footing for our own language, and in 1925 we celebrate the start of the Afrikaans language, and in 1933 we have our own version of the Bible in Afrikaans.
And what a tremendous event! If you cannot pray to God in your own language, you're still culturally away from where you are. Such a monumental part in our past, and not that long ago, just 100 years ago, basically 101 years ago, the official recognition of Afrikaans. And then very fitting, the language monument, the Afrikaans monument on the right hand side. We have a small biography of the heroes that we have on the left hand side. We have in writing. And something, did we mention Psalm 9 being included in the series? This is the 9th series of the Wara.
Correct.
And for that reason, you read Psalm 9 and you included parts of it on every note.
Correct. So it's on each note, and we are very thankful for being able to put it on the notes.
What do we have on the back of the 200 Wara?
So at the back we've got the bakhoor jakkals. So the bakhoor jakkals is always an animal that the Boers are not very fond of, because they come and eat the sheep, and
luckily they actually don't do too much damage. They catch much smaller prey, but they seem aggressive. At least they try to be aggressive.
But the symbolism is that they can do much with little resources, and they are very nimble, and they are innovative in how to survive.
I like it. And the picture on the backside representing our historical cultural holiday.
So it's basically the economic uprising where we got back to work after the war and
build up a nation.
And it's the start of building up a nation from scratch.
Now for the big surprise, the fact that this series for the first time includes
500 ora.
500 oras. What's on it?
So we've got Professor Karel Boshoff, who started Orania in 1991, and then we also very importantly got President Paul Correia on his Orania monument.
Now, Tony, I want to make a distinction, because all the other historical heroes we see on the left-hand side and the monuments on the right-hand side. So here the hero is clearly one of the key founders of Orania, Professor Karel Boshoff. But on the right-hand side is Paul Kruger, but in his form as a monument, not in his picture as a man, because the visionary work from Professor Boshoff made it possible that we re-erect the Paul Kruger statue here in Orania after all the attacks it had to face in Church Square in Pretoria.
Correct, and also
giving it a new home.
Also, we are setting forth the Republican principles and the Republican ideology that we would prefer to live by.
And the back we have the funk. What is a funk in English?
Geel funk.
I don't know what a funk is in English. Yeah. Well known for his nesting and building abilities.
And building, and that's exactly what we do in Orania. We build.
Fantastic. And the holiday, the cultural holiday?
The cultural holiday is obviously Founders Day again, because Orania was also founded, but also Heldendag, Heroes Day. So Paul Correia was a hero, but we also think Prof. Karel Boshoff was also a hero to start Orania.
What is the single biggest moment for you in regards to this series?
To unashamedly tell our story. And it's about being proud of who you are, to know where you are going.
Well, for your next visit in Orania, not only can you come and exchange some of these notes at the Orania Movement's information office, it's actually also possible to buy the full collector series. Come to Orania, come do some transactions in Ora. Thank you very much to the Orania Chamber of Commerce making this amazing project possible. This is how we celebrate our story, how we tell our story through everyday things. Tony, you and your team did phenomenal work.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate all the compliments.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe. Really does help us out a lot if our message gets spread. Thank you for watching up to this point. Do leave some comments. What do you think of this new Ora series? Do you like it? Do you like it more than some of the previous series? Do tell us your experience as well. If you want to become a member of the Orania movement, you can just follow the link in the description of this video, becoming a member, or if you want to donate, follow the link below that. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, let's continue building freedom in our time.